Today I want to provide a sketch, as it were, of a rhetoric for the 21st century and the kinds of things we've been talking about and working with. Um, the questions that I've laid out for us for the rest of the semesters go like this. What is a description of a rhetoric for the 21st century? What is its relationship to the rhetoric attributed to Aristotle? Who are the advocates of such a rhetoric, and what are some of their reasons for advocating for it? And what if we call it Hectic Zen? The whole notion of Hectic Zen, I think, is a strange attractor, a place in which we can begin to organize our thoughts around the information overload we're faced with. And we should talk a little bit about that information overload. You've been experiencing it in class. You experience it on a daily basis. As Sir Ken Robinson points out, we live in the most stimulating time ever for human beings, and I suppose that has to do with a judgment call on how stimulated our ancestors were. I imagine that as we consider pieces on the YouTube, like Did You Know, where we find out that information is growing at such an incredible rate that even the number of words that are used and the information used in a week are more than most people would have dealt with 100 years ago. So information overload is probably a place to start. And what I'm interested in, I think, is, is a point in the overload when we either tune out or surrender to the overload and to the flow of the overload, which means that we become a part of that overload in some way. We become, as Gloria Anzaldúa puts it, excruciating alive to the world. And so it's this peak experience, again, as Sir Ken Roberts describes it, where we are ready for something. We are ready for an insight, for an aha moment, for some glimpse of something exciting and new to us. It's this peak experience as a habit that interests me and that moves me much of the time, and probably throughout most of my career and life. So let's talk about defining a little bit Hectic Zen, and then we can go back to these other questions as time permits and as we work with them during the semester. A hipster saying goes like this, that if you don't know what hectic is, you're not hectic enough. Let's say that again. If you don't know what hectic is, you're not hectic enough. As McLuhan says in Medium, our electrically configured world has forced us to move from the habit of data classification to a mode of pattern recognition. We can no longer build serially, block by block, step by step, because instant communication ensures that all factors of the environment and experience coexist in a state of active interplay. And I think this state of interplay is a reality for us socially and in terms of working through what we need to do to understand the world. We have moved to a sort of pattern recognition, one that requires us to take a more holistic view than Aristotle did. So it's the world is hectic. And the Zen part comes in when we surrender ourselves to that and find a point of reference with which we can, in some way, interpret what's going on. I've mentioned Charles Sanders Peirce, and the third, that is the interpretant. It's also what we might call in physics, right, a strange attractor, something that gathers all the information around it. And so we might start out by defining something, understanding what it is. As Peirce would say, that's the first. Next, we compare it and contrast it to something to understand it better, and that's the second. Third, we find an interpretant, something through which we can begin to interpret what that thing and its contrastive information means to us, and that is the third. So those are things that when we move into the state of the third, Peirce's state of the third, we are practicing, I think, Hectic Zen, because we become meditative, we become contemplative, we are stimulated by a sort of quieter, thoughtful process that is informed by our feelings, by our emotions, by our intellect, and by, yes, our instincts or intuitions. Instincts, intuitions, insights, those are all part of what comes from this experience of being involved in Hectic Zen.